feeling good, can I tell?
It's just glasses.
What's up, family? My name is Brother Ray Ray.
You good with glasses?
Yeah, I might stumble because I've been... Welcome, family. My name is Brother Ray Ray. We'd like to welcome everyone to the Brooklyn William Mackey Jr. History Club. We meet here every other Wednesday in honor of William Mackey Jr., El-Haj Malik Shabazz, Brother Amos Wilson, Brother Assad, Khalid, Gil Noble, Louis Gray, Alton, Dr. Clark, Dr. Ben, Ivan Van Sertima, Professor George Simmons, and all the historians who gave up fame and fortune. They could have made a lot of money, and they wanted to bring information, the correct information, to the global world community. They didn't have to go the route that they did. So we want to keep their name alive and actually the work that they did historically. Is the mic on the top?
Yeah.
We want to keep their name alive historically because they wouldn't be on the call of duty. So we salute these people. And in honor of Leola Maddox, in honor, family, of Leola Maddox and the United African Movement, who drove an old car from Teaneck, New Jersey, all the way to the United African Movement, because she believed in bringing people together. She believed in having live lectures, and she would eat her dinner in the UAM because she wanted to bring people together and tell the story. So we never want to forget Sister Leola Maddox and the United African Movement in Alton. Brother Raji is going to bring the camera over to the Amos collection. And family, we have these books in honor of Amos Wilson and Brother Sababu, African World Info Systems. So Sababu can continue the great work of Amos Wilson. The first Power Pack book is Blueprint for Black Power. The second is The Psychology of Self-Hatred and Self-Defeat toward a Reclamation of the African Mind. The third classic is Black on Black Violence, and the title of this book is The Psychodynamics of Black Self-Annihilation in Service of White Domination. I'm going to read it again. Amos Wilson's Black on Black Violence, The Psychodynamics of Black Self-Annihilation in Service of White Domination. Every big city mayor, talking head, politician, news media, phony baloney, regular talk, we killing each other. Why we keep doing it? It's our fault, but you never hear anybody mention the great work of Amos Wilson, Black on Black Violence. It's a classic. Amos's classic, Awakening and Natural Genius of Black Children, Issues of Manhood in Black and White, Issues of Manhood in Black and White, The Falsification of African Consciousness, African-Centered Consciousness versus the New World Order, and you hear a lot about the New World Order. Every time you turn around, they're talking about the Great Reset, the New World Order. Amos wrote that book decades ago. The Developmental Psychology of the Black Child, Distorted Truths, the Bastardization of African Cosmology, S.K. Damiana, and Revealing the Unspeakable Bible Verses by L. Ponder. And this classic in honor of our good friend and Commandant Louis Ray Rivera, come out of Martian Project. His classic Jazz in Jail. And the reason why I never want to forget Brother Louis Ray is because when Professor Mackey left us, Louis Ray Rivera took up the mantle of the Mackey's group, and he would come down here and speak for hours and hours. Historians could speak all day. And he would come down here and speak, and me, Brother Hassar, who left us too soon, Brother Calvin, and Brother Colvin, Dr. Lewis, original members of the Mackey's group. It was only a few of us. And Louis Ray would talk, and then we would walk him home, family, and he only lived a couple of blocks away on Jefferson Avenue. And we would walk him home, and Louis Ray Rivera would talk for another hour and a half. So we never want to forget Brother Louis Ray. And he left us too soon. Bed-Stuy all the way. I have some publications here for the global world community to read and purchase and do your own research. Thanks to Brother Truss Graham in his book, and Louis Ray Rivera mentioned this book, Jews, God, and History. And with all the stuff going on, you better know the history of these Jews. And the books is out here. This is one of them. Hebrews, the lost Jews, the last of the Ethiopian philosophers, the story of the surviving ancient tribes of black Jews recognized as such by the state of Israel, who now face extinction at the hands of their Christian and Muslim countrymen. Just happened to be strolling and picked this up in a box that they were selling books. You can find them all over the place. Dr. Randy Short's classic, Slavery Mastery, The Impact of Religious Slavery Revealed, in honor of Dr. Randy Short. In honor of Big Harold, who left us too soon. And he mentioned this book, The Transfer Agreement, the untold story of the secret pact between the Third Reich and Jewish Palestine. Edwin Black, in honor of Big Harold, who left us too soon. Let me go see if Cynthia McKinney's book is in there, please. Oh, no, I got it. Sorry, I got it. Dope Incorporated, the British Opium War Against the World. Page 49. Progressive Press, the legalization of marijuana, and it got a great big picture in the front of George Soros. So when you look at everybody smoking weed all over the place, and all these weed shops opening up, if you get this book, you'll find out the culprits behind this. One of the greatest ancestors, he left us too soon. They didn't have too many computers at this time. Black Man and the Nile and His Family by Dr. Ben. And they didn't have too many computers, and this book is in honor of Dr. Ben. Capitalism on a Ventilator, the impact of COVID-19 in China and the US. I just happened to be strolling and found this book, Capitalism on a Ventilator. Tells you about all the money they made during the 19 with these ventilators. in honor of our sister Cynthia McKinney, when China sneezes from the corona lockdown to the global political economic crisis. In my personal opinion, this is the only person that cared about the people of Georgia. And they wind up setting her up and getting her out of office because she spoke up. Never forget Cynthia McKinney. And them same folks down there that looked like her on orders from other people ran her out. Raji. Without sanctuary, easing on this one. This book has a pictorial of our people being hung in the South, the big crowds, the gatherings. These brothers was hung in Duluth, Minnesota. The pictures is here. In this book, Without Sanctuary, they go to dogs, they go to crowds. The pictures is unbearable. And you still got phony baloney people running around all these years later, still talking about we gotta set up a commission to study reparations. Here we go again. And if you get this, they must have never looked at this book. Here go another study by black folks. Dr. Scott Whitaker out of Atlanta. His book, Medicine, is the Coupe de Ville, the causes and solutions to disease and malnutrition and the medical sins that are killing the world, in honor of Dr. Scott. Our comrade, Ayo Kamati, in his new book, he redid it, Jews Are the Problem. World War II, COVID, media censorship. Brother Ayo has did an excellent job on this book. And it's a blockbuster of research. So if you could get it from War on the Horizon and do the research on this book, gotta give Ayo Kamati a great big hand. Edward Dow, Causes Unknown, from the epidemic of sudden death in 2021, 22, 23, 24, and 25. He used to be an analyst at BlackRock, and he wrote a book on all the sudden death syndrome from the blood clots that people took. And according to the book, he was an analyst with BlackRock, and they wanted to find out how all these healthy people were all of a sudden dropping dead after the 19. Two blockbusters by Robert Kennedy Jr., the real Anthony Fauci, and Vax and Unvax, Let the Science Speak. Robert Kennedy, Brian Hooker. This is from, and they all Times bestsellers, Children's Health Defense. This book is based on over 100 studies and peer-reviewed literature that considered vaccinating versus unvaccinated populations. Each study is analyzed and health difference among infants, children, and adults who have been vaccinated and those who are not, presented in this context. Readers will find information on the infant-child vaccination schedule, Thelma Rousseau in vaccines, live virus vaccines, the human papillomatosis HPV vaccine, vaccination in Gulf War illness, influenza flu vaccines, hepatitis B vaccines, and the COVID-19 vaccines and vaccines during pregnancy. Given the massive push to vaccinate the entire global population, This book is timely and necessary for individuals to make informed choices for themselves and their families. And we salute Robert Kennedy, presidential candidate. Don't forget about him. And I wind up picking this up. This is another bestseller by Robert Kennedy. The Wuhan cover-up and the terrifying bioweapons arms race. We want to give Robert Kennedy a big hand on this book. I haven't got into it yet, but I read a few on the cover, and it's a bad boy. So those are just books that you could get. We want to wish everybody a happy Kwanzaa. And anybody that was able to celebrate whatever they wanted to bring people together, long as you did it, that's good. Because if you left it up to outside, they don't want you to get together on nothing no more. I'm going to read a few community announcements. Linda, you can hear them on the other side. We got the Thorough Black Talk radio program. Keisha, Tad, Ashe, Brother Black, and Sister Marcia. They come on every Thursday at 8 o'clock on Facebook Live, and it's one of the hottest shows on the East Coast. Our Philadelphia Connection with Sister Empress Chi and the Million Women's March. That's Blog Talk Radio out of Philly. Every Saturday at 10:30. The number is 1-319-527-6189, and Sister Empress is doing an excellent job with the people in Philly. Brother Ayo Kamati comes on every Monday at 10 a.m. WSYP 95.1 FM. Come out of Birmingham, Alabama, with Anthony Mohammed, Sankofa Revolutionary Radio, and he talks about his book. Our good friend and comrade out of Baltimore, Brother Darren Mohammed, State of the City. Tune in Radio 1590 AM out of Glen Burnie, Maryland, and also on Instagram, State of the City, Baltimore. Brother Darren is giving out some good information, and he comes on Saturday at 12 o'clock. He comes on sometime Wednesday and Thursdays, give or take. But our Baltimore connection with State of the City and Brother Darren Mohammed, he's doing a good job. And if you have Instagram, you go on State of the City, Baltimore, and on Facebook, Darren Mohammed, State of the City. Every Tuesday, and if you're Dr. Aline, Your Immunity Project, 7 o'clock, every Tuesday. The show yesterday was unbelievable, and he was laying out some procedures that they do on people about the heart. And the information that he gave out yesterday, oh man. We want to give him a big thanks. The African Echoes Study Group, every Friday at 8 o'clock. African Echoes and our good brother out of Newark, Brother Trust Graham. They have a magnificent study group, and they're doing the psychology of self-hatred and self-defeat toward the reclamation of the African mind. Comes on 8 o'clock every Friday, and one of the members will probably log on later on and put the information in the chat for you to log on to that Power Pack Friday night study group with Brother Trust Graham and the gang out of Newark. Also on Saturday at 1:30, the Know Thyself study group. Brother Trust Graham is also the mediator of that group, and Brother True and the brothers, they have an excellent study group, and they're doing Chancellor Williams' The Destruction of Black Civilization, and they should be on, and they will put the information in the chat for you to get it. and you can log on to that Friday and Saturday study group. The Simotep community with Dr. James McIntosh has an excellent program. WBAI comes on Wednesday from 2 o'clock to 3 o'clock. Richard Dean Theodore and James McIntosh, they had an excellent program today on mental health. And they was talking about Brookdale Hospital and had a few people from the community on there. So we want to salute Dr. James McIntosh. And I believe this Saturday, no, they, 1 second family, just let me bring this up. And this is an event that they're giving. The Simotep community presents 2023-2024 New Year's celebration. From Kawumba to Imani, celebrating the birth, Miss Amy, Jack Garvey, and Dr. Ben and Dr. Clark. It's from Sunday, 8 p.m., December 31st, to 1 a.m., January 1st, at the Simotep Center, 13505 Rockaway Boulevard, Ozone Park. And the telephone number is 347-907-0629. So we want to salute Simotep for this program that they're giving out. Also, if you want to go into all and see all the lectures from the Brooklyn William Mackey Jr. History Club family, you go on YouTube and type in BK William Mackey Jr. History Club, and you can go through all the lectures and do your study and go over what's going on. Also, the Community Cop family comes on every Tuesday at 5 o'clock on Manhattan Neighborhood Network. That's Mike Graves, Noah Lita, and Julian. That's Manhattan Neighborhood Network, 5 o'clock every Tuesday. And you could also go on YouTube and go into the old programs that they give and do your own research on what they're talking about. So these are just events that we provide to the public and for the people that's here. And give yourself a big hand for the people that came out through thick and thin and come to support the Brooklyn William Mackey Jr. History Club. We want to salute you. So tonight, this speaker is a good friend of the Mackey's group. If you want to witness his lectures, you could go on YouTube with Dr. Fred Monderson. And ladies and gentlemen, without further ado, the Brooklyn William Mackey Jr. History Club. Give him a great big hand. Dr. Fred Monderson, the Queen, his architect and their temples, and Sonny Carson, their tribute, part 1.
Hey, brother.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Hotep family.
Thank God.
It is an honor for me to be here today. I consider you a higher thinking level of conscious people. It is a privilege and an honor. My topic today is the Queen for Architect and their Temple. Of course, there will be a few diversions before I get to my destination. Pardon me?
Do you want
Yes,
any
I
coffee,
get-
Doc? You want any coffee, Doc?
Pardon?
You want coffee, water?
The water would be fine. But here's my glasses. Before I begin, let me get a couple of things out of the way. First of all, I was recently reading Albert Churchward. He wrote Signs and Symbols of Primordial Man and the origins of the human race and what have you. And one thing that he said that struck me is that the African kings plaited their beard. So I found in my archives a photo of Amun-Ra, the Egyptian god of the New Kingdom, the middle of the New Kingdom, and lo and behold, he didn't have just a straight beard or a curved beard, but he had a plaited beard, which establishes Egyptian kingship with interior Africa kingship practices. So I wanted to share that with you. I wanted to, I'm not being a sour grapes, but I have a centerfold that dates back to 1997. And you will see some wonderful colored photographs here. I have the last photographs of Dr. Clark in the chair. I can't see it, but there is Sister Kefla, Brother Jeffries, Brother Ben Carruthers, and several other people. I didn't write this article, but the photographs are the highlight of the article. You can't find my name. They hid my name over here somewhere. I have to search for my name. So people have a tendency to utilize your work without giving you due credit. I just found this today as I was preparing, and I thought I would share it with you. But here we have Sister Annie, Marimba Annie. I studied with her at Hunter College. Dr. Carruthers, Len Jeffries, Sister Kefla, Brother Segu, Dr. Tiltai Obanga, when he was explaining what is the meaning of the word black land, which is a reference to the people, not the physical geographies per se. So he's in here, okay? And there are a couple of other things. I'd like to draw your attention to this set of buttons that are here. I consider these lettuce campaigns that I've been on. One of the images here is that of Reverend Sharpton. We all have our differences. We are supposed to be. We're not as unique or monolithic as they think. You look at the fingers. As G2 used to say, not everybody at the table is at the same level. I remember back in '94 when I was teaching at a high school in Brooklyn. Of course, I taught in college, in high school, middle school, and primary school. And I was trying to get a degree. G2 always said to me, Fred, try to get the highest degree in the land. So I was trying to get a doctorate, and I was going to school in Delaware. And this lady opened up the Times and said to me, Monderson, is that you holding holding an umbrella over Reverend Sharpton in the rain? And the instructor looked at me. Well, I had to withdraw from that. So I was at the high school, and I walked in with this button that says Senator Sharpton, and the principal said, that's illegal. Well, I didn't make the cut. Fortunately for me, because I was at a school that was instructing these beautiful Russian ladies who were using there as an intro into the sculpture. And when they blocked me, I went back to teach beautiful black ladies. So a good thing came out of that. So the Reverend Sharpton buttons, like all of the other campaigns, whether it's Million Man March, Million Woman March, Million Youth March, the middle button says, we're at war. So ladies and gentlemen, I did come to discuss in the second part of part one of my lecture, my book called, this is my recent book, came out within the last month, Sonny Carson, The Final Triumph. And what was the final triumph? The return of the bones of Samuel Carson, his ancestor, to Ghana, West Africa, to create a site of pilgrimage. The significance of this book is that Sonny died more than 20 years ago, and the powers that be said, well, we got rid of him. But this book is a resurrection of Sonny Carson. Okay, and some of his writings are in here. Some of my tributes to him are in here. The photographs that I took in my travels, because what had happened was I went to Sonny and I presented him my resume, and I said, sir, I want to work with you. And he looked me over and he says, okay, come aboard. So I was with him for the last 5 years of his life, and I tried to document as much of his work as possible. And I don't mean to pat myself on my back, but had it not been for the effort that I put out, Sonny Carson's name would have been forgotten. Just like how the community to honor black heroes is forgotten. Everybody tried to make $1 off of Sonny's name. They weren't successful, but I kept his name and his work alive. So hopefully, if not tonight, the next session, I will get into Sonny Carson, the final trial. I happened to find this one. It's called Michael Jackson, The Last Dance. What had happened was, again, I opened turned on the TV one morning, and I saw Reverend Sharpton, and they said Michael Jackson had passed, and there's going to be a tribute to him at the Apollo Theater. So I rushed up to the Apollo. All I saw was a piece of cardboard and a flower. So I took a picture of it, and I went back the next day, and a number of things started to happen. People started coming and deposit bouquets in tribute to Michael and what have you. So I wrote this book called Michael Jackson, the Apollo Memorial. I got 5 stars for it on Amazon. The Apollo took me to court. It said, well, you use our marquee without our permission. And they said to me, look, we don't want to stifle your creativity, but you have to change the name of the book. You have to change the cover of the book. Any number of copies that you have, you can keep them, but you cannot reprint them. So I changed the name of the book, and it's called Michael Jackson, The Last Dance. It's a 5-star book. It's a book about all his work and everything is, and it's something that needs to be added to your library collection. So, I mean, I was with, I told you I'm at war, so I was with Dr. Jeffries at one of these Black Writers conferences at the Medgar College, and my son here was there, the one that passed in 20, and I was telling him, I said, you know, Dr. J, these young people are difficult, you know, and my son is standing right there, and he already got his black belt, you know, Dr. J said, don't you have a belt? I said, well, you know, they'll arrest you if you abuse your children. He said, man, get your belt and whack your son. Well, about my belt, so that he's not here, but I do have a belt. Ladies and gentlemen, these are certainly challenging times we live in. When I was at Temple University, and I mentioned the Temple story, but never got into it, the bottom line is that they were not, my mother died, I went away to bury her, and came back, I saw the Temple had this PhD program. So I marshaled all my resources, sent in my information, paid my fee or whatever, and Temple wrote me back and said, dear Mr. Anderson, unfortunately we cannot admit you into the PhD program. So I said, who is Anderson? I said, if I can give you all of my information and you can't get my name right, that seat belongs to me. So I fly up there, and I was told, well, we have this community program. If you enroll in it, we're going to try to slide you into matriculated status. Well, ultimately, I was told, you know more than the professor, so we can't admit you. So I dropped out, and thank goodness I don't owe Temple anything. So when I was at Temple, I did learn never let a historic situation pass you by without writing or saying anything about it. In New York today, if you see something or you hear something, they say something about it. The ancient Egyptian Akshanki reasoned, only a good heart can truly withstand the enormous challenges humans face. He meant other than physical but social, psychological, and emotional challenges. The eloquent peasant, he had a problem with a noble who seized his property. So he complained, he went to the high priest, the high official Renzi, and he says, if the mast of your ship is not properly affixed in a storm, it will capsize. So all around us, the storm is raging. One such effort was yesterday at the Kwanzaa celebration, espousing Mark's promise to dare dream of a better day. Can often soften assault on a people steeped in double consciousness. In 1922, the year in which King Tut was discovered, Casey Hayford of Ghana, West Africa, he wrote, the world has become toxic, materialist, mechanical, and only the healing potency of the African psyche in spirituality can save humanity from its own induced destruction, impounding and induced destruction. The one purposeful and effective antidote we do have does not get the attention it deserves because we focus too much on things not consequential to our well-being. We give too much attention to Russia and China and other similar regimes actually struggling to survive on their own right. Important, I found the answer partially, if you will. Have you ever been to one of these, or have you lately been to one of these primary school Christmas shows with the little urchins on stage putting their best foot forward? They were and can be exceedingly happy, full of joy and vibrancy, yet not fully understanding, but can dare for those better days that Malala Karenga mentioned yesterday. This is their world, their future. They are sailing on this ship of state in the middle of the ocean amidst an inglorious storm. All that we can tell them is America is going down and Russia and China is rising. We're not giving them hope, inspiration, and heroes to emulate. America ain't going down. You know, you got to understand that they must have their own plan. Okay, everything is dynamic. Everything is in motion. Sometimes art is politics, and politics can become art. We live in a materialist society. Money is the god we worship. In the movie Green Beret with John Wayne and Raymond St. Jacques, the soldiers told the Montagnards, we will give you money. And the chief of the Montagnards said, what is money? You never heard about money. Samuel Jackson, the negotiator, told Saban, I love watching Western movies. Personally, I love how Shane took down Jack Wilson, if you know about the movie. As a soldier, I watch war movies. A particular one that impressed me, it was called Defense of Fire Base Gloria. A special scene involving two sergeants, one black, one white. Resting in his bunker, the white sergeant felt sand falling from the roof and thought that someone was on the roof. Coming out of the bunker with his pistol drawn, he looked up and saw the black sergeant on top. Then it says, I didn't know you were a flag waver. To which the black guy responded, there's some good things about it. At the height of the French Revolution, Edmund Burke, the English philosopher, he said that the only thing necessary for evil to triumph is for good men and women say nothing. Even Malcolm X, in his unquestioned brilliance, pointed out, you've been had, you've been took, you've been bamboozled. You must realize some took the 20 pieces of silver. Dr. James did not, Leonard James, nor did G2EC. I certainly did not take that 30 pieces of silver. So you can't blatantly cast a white net as to who took the money. We all are George Santos. Where I'm now sitting is in my view, is a sacred spot. I am privileged and honored to be here before you. I consider you a higher level thinking audience. Once I had the thought of reconsecrating this spot, emphasizing the sacredness and determining the quality of the messages that should be presented. However, I held my peace, though I kept my powder dry. Even realizing, speaking to power such as you are, I may not be invited back, even if they generally say, we got to get you back, but they never do invite you back. So I sat here and I heard a presenter ask the question, who are we? Today, an appropriate question should be, who are we listening to? Those young people at the Christmas show, what are we teaching them? We will all die one day, like we all must. Dr. Jacques Felder often reminded, no one gets out of this life alive. So what we are leaving for these young people, we must ask ourselves. Is there, in this fast-moving changing times, these young people are not leaving. Our ancestors who endured slavery, discrimination, racial discrimination, suspicion, doing everything while black, are buried here, and our cultural contributions are affixed here. Don't tell me about Africans who had a coup and kicked out the French and now Russia is helping them. These Africans squandered their independence. The mighty sparrows sang about coup after coup all the while. As opportunistic officers disrupted the path to a vibrant and united political kingdom, as Nkrumah often admonished. The presenter reminded the Americans used the gun to kill, but say nothing that the Russians used a mallet to bash in people's brains. Despite what many may think, Russians are not in Africa for the love of Africans, but to help sustain their own system. I'm an African historian, an African, a Pan-African. In 1950 or thereabouts, right after I was born, in the late 40s, Professor John Clark, he predicted 100 years for Africa to be truly free and a united power. We are fast approaching that 100-year mark, and Africa is fragmented for lack of bold, forward-thinking leadership. They don't make guns, they don't make cars. Sonny Carson wanted to build a car manufacturer in factory in Africa, but he got no help with that. When the ancient Egyptians could no longer feel bold warrior pharaohs, they lost it all. Don't even question my blackness. I'm the ace of spades, baby. My mother, Monderson, was fighting for Ghana's independence on March 6, 1957. My grandmother, Cherie Scriville, was a Garveyite in 1925. Next year will be 100 years. I'm going to celebrate her Garveyite philosophy. I wrote more than 1,000 pieces for the black press in New York. In Brooklyn, they never paid me a dime. I was working to educate my community. I served the city of Brooklyn for more than 100 years. My 8-year-old said, Daddy, how old are you? I mean, one of those urchins that was on the stage. As chairman of the Transportation Committee in my board, I changed 15 streets for black heroes, making my mark so that our people will have something to remind them later on. Actually, as a young man, I wanted to match Flinders Petrie and George Sarton, who had 1,200 published works. So, I'm moving in that direction. I mentioned the buttons that represent a number of campaigns that I was a part of in struggle for our people. And my fist, I created that in Vietnam, collected all the names of some of the black soldiers scattered across the country. So what do we tell those young people at the Christmas show? America is going down on Russia, and some 8 nations are rising in challenge. There are some 200 nations in the United Nations, and most are coming to and depending on America. The immigrants are not marching on Russia and China, North Korea, North Korea, where they refuse that black soldier. We don't know if the coups in in Africa were Russian inspired. Okay? America has the antidote. I'm not sitting by doing nothing. The soul of America is black America youth who are equipped with double consciousness. We must give our children hope, inspiration, intellectual fortitude to endure, be good, bring good into the world, and try to help self, family, community, nation, and the world. In galvanizing inspiration and powerful role models to emulate, we can tell them the vice president is a black woman, the defense secretary is black, the chairman of the joint chiefs is black, the House minority leader, soon to be speaker, is black. We have Cedric Richmond, Maxine Waters, Sheila Jackson, Ketanji Jackson in the mix. We have Barack Obama. So you don't like him, that's your problem. I love him. You don't like Obama, that's your problem. A guy came to my book table at the festival and he told me, I love me some Obama. We must teach children that education is the key. The war is in the head, up here, in the brain, not in the mouth. I know everyone is entitled to their own opinion, but not their own facts. In Egypt, there's a place named Deir el-Bahari, a Thebes Luxor, which is a part of my focus this evening. When the deceased commences his journey into the afterlife, he enters into their belief, he enters in a passage in the Deir el-Bahari vicinity. On the way, the tree goddess pours 4 pitchers of water in him because he has to cross the desert. When he arrives at the Hall of Judgment gates, he has to navigate some 20 pylons, each with a guard. A guard whose name he has to know and to repeat. Entering the Hall of Judgment, he is met by Horus, who introduces him into the psychostation, that's the judgment. Anubis adjusts the scales where his heart is weighed against a feather, the feather of Ma'at. Ma'at means justice, right, truth, order, balance, equality. Thought records found, justified, or truer voice, which Dr. J. Courage has emphasized. Horus then introduces him to Osiris, who sits further back on his throne with the 4 sons of Horus before him, and Isis and Nephthys at his rear. Similarly, on the throne of that innermost sanctum is where Obama sat. From there he surveyed the landscape. He knows where the bones are buried. He set up his own shadow military. And because he knows so much, we are still standing. He knows the system in and out. This is why they're afraid of him. And he is is on our side, especially because of the no-nonsense Michelle. She ain't taking no nonsense. Obama did admit that politics is a contact sport when you see these linebackers rush the passer or rush the person who carried the ball in football. You know, it is a contact sport. When Obama gets home, Michelle, herself a warrior woman, tells him, here's what my people think, what they want and what they're struggling for. Obama is a man of great intellect. He possesses excellence, he possesses elegance of mind and nobility of spirit. When Obama's name is mentioned, we must not express disdain, or we sound like Trump's base, who applaud and cheer when he rants. Immigrants are poisoning our nation's blood. Do we tell these young people about the African origins of Christianity? That when George Jackson and Gerald Massey wrote about so long ago, then one man spends a whole lifetime rehashing this meaningless reality and continue to make a living about it? No, we teach our young people how to think, how to develop intellectual autonomy, how to analyze each and every situation, how to read and understand effectively, how to make quality judgments, for all the marbles are always at stake. How to assess information. One gentleman presented here, and then he asked, what do we do? The answer was, my job is to present information. It is up to you to decide how it serves you. It cannot serve you if you don't know how to process it. Teaching our young intellectual autonomy goes a long way. Like I said, I taught in college, high school, middle school, primary school. I did not waste my time in college. This is where I collected 800 signatures for David Dinkins in '93. In '97, I was discussing the origins of man in Africa at a shop that was on Monderson Avenue. In '92, I wrote the Afrocentric response to invasion of Somalia to find General Adid. I was at Temple at that time. And then the professor wrote me this 5-word letter. Well done, Monderson, Malefi Asante. 5 words. Got some letters here. This is when Dr. James, when I taught at City Tech, and Dr. James observed me, done with excellent. I served 20 semesters in City Tech. The guy who was in charge of the department, he didn't put my name on it. He said, hey, Monderson was here for 20 semesters. This is my associate degree from City Tech. My BA from Hunter College. My master's from Hunter. My BA from John Jay. From my MPA from John Jay. I don't have my MPA, my MA in education, supervision, and administration from Brooklyn. This is my doctorate.
Slow down, Doc. I gotta get the. I gotta get it, brother.
This is my doctorate. I spent 2 summers at Oxford University in '76. And again in '81, I I listened to 128 lectures over there. I paid for all of my education. I invested in me. Nobody helped me. Okay? I'm an independent. I haven't paid those prices. I can speak for me. When the racist Dylan Roof entered Mother Emmanuel Church and killed those saintly people on their knees praying, intending a race war, they forgave him so as not to be burdened with the racial hatred he represented. And we see so many writers exposed today. Then there are blacks who grumble at the breadcrumbs from Trump's table. At Kwanzaa yesterday, a sister reminded him, we did not become African. Africa is inside of us. Each one of the redeeming attributes of the African is a process, he possesses morality, balance, a sense of justice, a sense of well-being, a thirst for the good, seeking after righteousness. Even this is denied him so often today. Dr. Anderson once told me, he was the principal I worked at the school in Queens, he said, I play to win, but I play with a sense of fairness. Donald Trump has no morals, besides being a liar. Colin Powell said, he lies. The clock stopped at 35,000 lies. I mean, seriously? In a 4-year period? Lies and false statements. He abused black women. The congresswoman from California, Maxine Waters, Fannie Willis, Judge Chutkin, Letitia James, the wife of the Corporal Johnson, who died in Niger on a mission. He called Amarosa Magog a dog. This is the water so many thirst after. They put him ahead of Obama. Give me a break. The singer Celia Cruz, she said, forgiving is not forgetting. President Obama arrived at Mother Emmanuel to give the eulogy. When he broke into song, Amazing Grace, that glorious wall of black men of the Christian faith on the dais rose in tumultuous acclamation because these were right Christians, not Christians of the right. These noble religious leaders saw elegance of mind and nobility of spirit in the man they call Obama. When you have an emergency, who do you call? Ben Crump? George Floyd. They call Reverend Sharpton to do the eulogy. So for Mother Emmanuel, they call President Hussein Obama the greatest president in the last 50 years. Just then, one of the grandmothers in the pew called James Clyburn over and told him, you tell us who to vote for. That's who we voted for. Clyburn, I met him one time, Reverend Sharpton, he was 17. He had something at one of those Senate places, and Clyburn was there, and I was able to touch his back, and I can feel the energy of the man. And he said this too, when I was 14 years old, I came from Guyana, he sang When a Man Loves a Woman,
Percy Sledge.
Percy Sledge. He came to see what it moved to sing over there, and I was 14 years old. I didn't have the money, but I worked my way up, and I was able to touch him on his back, you know. So this guy said to me, when I told that story years later, he said, oh, so that was you who touched his back. Well, you know, I got this thing about touching people on the back. So James Clyburn was there, and I was able to just rest my hand on his back, and I felt good about it. So one of the grandmothers said to him, you tell us who to vote for, and that's who we'll vote for. Clyburn is a perpetual fighter in the belly of the beast, and has been an architect of much of the President Biden's accomplishment. So who are we listening to? Are we listening to Reverend Sharpton, Mark Morial, Martin Luther King III and his wife? Why is Dr. King running up to Washington every August to present our case, challenging some 400 legislative actions across the country, pushed by Republicans to eviscerate the black vote that our people have fought for over 150 years, and now, we're challenged. Why does the black left tear down black leaders and the white right uplift the likes of Donald Trump and Rudy Giuliani? Count me out, Lindsay. Salute the insurrectionists, Hartley, and even little Marshall. Our leaders take enemy fire, friendly fire, sometimes family fire. On the other hand, Republicans say, if you put Donald Trump in jail, we will move the Oval Office into the cell. That makes it difficult for the Secret Service. Ever notice when Giuliani gets up there and he says that Donald is the chosen one? He looks up. Why does he look up? He was afraid that there would be one of those thunderbolts done on him because they know he's lying. I often reflect on W.J. Perry's book on European civilization, published in 1934, again in 1938, in which he quotes G. Eliot Smith, who wrote The Ancient Egyptians in 1911, who recounted the many contributions African Egyptians made to our society. And he went on and on about our society. However, he did not refer to African society, human society, but to European society. The writer Friedman said that the Chinese know that Donald Trump is a chump. He said that. Donald Trump wants immigrants from Norway and Sweden. He wants blue-eyed, white-skinned people, not the huddled masses. This country is founded on the huddled masses. We must ask ourselves, when he's finished with these immigrants who are poisoning our country, who will be next? Be reminded, again, moving, the Chronicles of Riddick. Lord Marshall made it clear, I will leave your world as the last one I will destroy. So what will happen to those young people at the Christmas show? We must teach them how to develop intellectual autonomy, a skill that empowers them to think clearly, to analyze and document every situation, to make sound judgments regarding all forms of challenges. We must give them survival strategies, how to persevere amidst the ever-present storm visited on our people. In this age of STEM, we must teach them where mathematics began. Who were the first mathematicians, architects, the first scientists and doctors? We must give them the hope, power, inspiration, and tools to be like the great black men and women I have mentioned so far. Dr. Diak and his research associate, Theophilo Bengal, he reminded us that Aristotle did not develop the syllogism, which is a logical tool of analysis that comprises thesis, synthesis, antithesis, that creates a new thesis that allows you to continuously unearth and bring to the fore facts, not speculation, not theories, facts. Julian said we got a lot of theories but no facts. Egyptian mathematicians, logicians, grammarians invented such 2,000 years before the Greek Pythagoras, Plato, Aristotle, and so many others. I told you that I found a kind of an answer. This is a 12-volume set. This is one volume. It's finished. I have not released it. It's on hold. It is called Empower Your Child's Reading and Knowledge Through Black History Exercises. So I took together 90 of the articles that I wrote, and I broke it down. What I want to do is, I want to teach our children how to read, how to think, how to write simple hieroglyphic sentences. Write their names and then start into simple sentences. I begin each chapter with a hieroglyphic alphabet. So they will learn the alphabet and then start making their mark. This book is full of photographs that I took.
Let me see it. Let me see it. Let me zoom in.
I begin with 2 discovery questions. What am I looking for in this article? I give them the article. In this case, this one is called Egypt and Africa. At the end of each article, I give them a cultural vocabulary. Cultural vocabulary. So one thing I can say for myself without being too facetious, I use a lot of powerful vocabulary. So there may be about 8,000 vocabulary words in the entire 12-volume set. Each vocabulary is broken down into syllabication so that they will learn how to...
Let them see it. Let me see it.
Yeah.
Go ahead, yeah.
Syllabication and the parts of speech for each. This is to show you that from 17 to 39 pages, this is vocabulary. Okay? Strengthening the vocabulary. I came up with this idea when you're driving your son to school or your daughter to school in the morning between 8 and 8:30 and they're sitting in the back playing with their phones. Let them learn 10 vocabulary words going to school. When you pick them up in the afternoon, let them learn 10 more vocabulary words so they learn 20 words for that day. Vocabulary is how people judge you. In the assignment, I tell them what to look for. Okay? So, adjective, adverb, conjunction, noun, preposition, verb, synonym, antonym.
Hold up, let me see it.
Antonym.
Okay, got it.
I tell them choose and define 7 words from the vocabulary.
Let me see it, Mike.
Choose and define 7 words from the vocabulary.
Got it.
5 synonyms, 5 antonyms, and look for cause and effect. Comparison or contrast. Sequencing. You must know what is a proposition, a noun, a pronoun. You must know location, time, order, movement, prepositions, right? I want them to know the 4 sentences, 4 types of sentences or patterns of sentences, all right? Subject, predicate. We have to know the type of sentences, declarative, interrogative. Exclamatory.
Hold up, Fred. Hold up. Let me let him see it. Okay. Got it.
Exclamatory, imperative types of sentences. Right. At the end of it, I got about 6 to 8 different word search involved. Word search.
Good.
At the end of the word search, I have what is called catchphrase Now all of this is just the first selection. Okay? Out of that, I take out different phrases. Each phrase, the child can learn how to write a topic, right, and go and do your research. Then at the end of that, I have discussion questions. So I begin with discovery questions and I end with discussion questions throughout. Okay? Now I've done this for some 90 different articles that I wrote. That's what comprises the 12-volume Black History Reading Strategy to empower them to develop intellectual autonomy so they can stand like everybody else and withstand the challenges. So that's some of the work.
Let them know where to get it from.
I didn't put it out. Generally, I put my work up on Amazon. It's there, but I didn't.
I'm working on it. Okay.
No, it's done. It's done already. But I'm working on something else. You know, I'm a hyperactive intellectual, so I gotta have something to feed on all the time. Last year, I was in Detroit one Friday night, kicking it with Dr. Len Jeffries. And he said, "We must thank Dr. Chikanta Diop." And I asked, "What for?" He responded, "He gave us Egypt." The question is, what are we doing to hold on to Egypt? Okay. Professor George Simmons, his name was mentioned earlier. He said to me, Monderson, I don't write about Martin Luther King or Malcolm X. Too many people write about them. I only write about ancient Egypt because not many of our people write about that. I wanted to establish a Black Egyptological research library in Brooklyn. For 30 years, nobody helped me. The politicians, they wouldn't even answer my call. Oh, we'll set up a meeting with you. One meeting I was supposed to meet with the Assemblyman 18 months ago, they're still putting me in their schedule. I got no help from the politicians. There is a Brooklyn Children's Museum in Brooklyn. There's a Brooklyn Children's Museum. The Jewish people established a Brooklyn Jewish Museum. They tell us, I learned a long time ago, the bones go, but the stones remain. We must erect concrete structures in which our people will feel safe. When I was teaching, I used to tell my children, hide out in the library. The police don't go in the library, they're not that smart, you know. So, but you go in the library and spend your time there instead they go in the park. So, I wanted to establish, I was supposed to get this piece of land to establish a four-story structure. The first floor would have a theater with a mic where these kids could communicate with people in Africa and the Caribbean or wherever. Young people, giving them something to do. The second floor would put computers with a service area. The third floor, the fourth floor, reading and housing of the books. They beat me every time, you know. I was sitting in a print shop on Atlantic Avenue in Brooklyn. A fellow came in and said to the lady, I want to mail this box. So she said, you have to take out the content of this box and put it in that box. And he took it out, put it on the counter, and lo and behold, it was a pair of sneakers. And I was so impressed. I said, wow, how much you pay for that? He said, I paid $600 for it on Amazon. I'm selling it for $400 on eBay. He said, in fact, I'm selling all of my sneakers. And I'm saying to myself, wow, one person can wear a pair of sneakers, 12 people can read a book. Right? The sneakers cost hundreds, the books cost less than $50. You know, what are we leaving for? My son, I'm leaving all of this here for you. All these things. But Dad, that's for 13. My fault is only 7. I reminded this political cartoon years ago, this big rat took his son up on this high place and said, son, I'm leaving all of this for you. And all you see is bellowing black smoke, garbage piled up, all kinds of nonsense. Intellectual autonomy is what empowers our children. So look, in Trinidad, the Calypsonians sing for party and so on. Lord Kitchener, he writes for the steel bands to play in the road march. My job, I'm not writing for, sorry to say it for you, I'm writing for your children, your grandchildren. You know, and I know that one day they'll say, Daddy, Mom, what were you doing when Dr. Monderson was trying to get help to do what he got to do? Well, you know, I was buying these $600 sneakers. Give me a break. Listen, I'm tired. Okay, I came here to discuss Queen Hatshepsut. Okay. Now, Hatshepsut was a unique female ruler. She was the fifth king of the 18th dynasty. She was a builder. She was an innovator. She was called the first great woman of history. Such a description is noteworthy given she ruled a nation, a major nation, for 2 decades in a world of male domination. In order to be successful, a number of developments characterized her rule as the fifth king of Egypt, and so subjected to enemy, friendly, and family fire. Remember Dr. Ben, he had the same thing. Enemy, friendly, and even family fire. Ask Dr. Lewis. When it comes to Dr. Ben, there's only 2 people I respect. Dr. Lewis and Greg Hardy. Now, never mind all these charlatans. I was in bed with Dr. Ben. Yeah, but he didn't recognize you. And he knew why. So she used charm, intellect, creativity, reliance on strong males in the kingdom. Among her many attributes and contributions, she was a builder of exceptional worth. She built her mortuary temple at Deir el-Bahari. She built a valley temple at the river through which a causeway or a walkway led to the first pylon of her temple. She built the Red Chapel that was the sanctuary in her day. And one of her adversaries, her nephews, they say her son, whatever, he came by, he broke it up, and he put up his own sanctuary. But this building, it was stuck in a pylon, and it was reconstituted and put back together at the start of the 20th century, and it's now in what is called the Open Air Museum in Karnak Temple. She erected 2 obelisks at Karnak. One has fallen, one still stands alongside one that's standing beside one of her father. Thutmose is one obelisk. So he put up 2 obelisks, and she put up 2 obelisks. And one of his fell, they don't know what happened to it. The zenith of her second obelisk was found, if you ever been there, beside the sacred lake. It was laying on beside the sacred lake. Guess what? In that plaza of where the sacred lake is, they now re-erected the top portion of her obelisk that had fell. So what I did was I went on that side over there, and I was able to get the 2 obelisks of her and her father and her second obelisk. So I got 3 obelisks in the same photograph. So they re-erected it. So she now has, though it's not as tall as it was in the beginning. Her obelisk, I think it weighed about 104 tons. She built a kiosk dedicated to the Theban triad at Luxor Temple in what is called the Ramesian front. Now, the theory is that there was a small temple there that this kiosk was erected in front of, and that Amenhotep III, which was a later king, dismantled that and erected the the Luxor magnificent structure, and that Ramses II and those are the 18th dynasty people, and then Ramses II of the 19th dynasty came and expanded the Luxor temple, creating what is called a court. They call it the Ramesian front. That is the front of Amenhotep's temple, and he enclosed the kiosk that she had erected by creating the great pylon. And now Thutmose came, and one of the things that these leaders are guilty of is that they would erase your name and put in their name. So Thutmose came, erased her name and put in his name. And then Ramses came and erased Thutmose's name and put in his name. So now if you go there and you see the kiosk and you see Ramses' name, you say, oh wow, Ramses built it. No, Hatshepsut did. And it's interesting because she built, okay, so at Karnak Temple, and I do have a book on Karnak Temple, that I did a 12-part series on YouTube on Karnak Temple for a program, 1001 Ways to Cope with Stress. The axis line runs east to west, right, which is the path of the sun god. So Hatshepsut opened not a parallel, perpendicular axis or pathway to get from Karnak Temple, which is the temple of the king of the gods, Amun, to his wife Mut, her temple, which is to the south. So she opened up a new pathway, and she erected what became the seventh pylon. The eighth pylon. Eighth pylon. So now, what happened with that eighth pylon is that there was the Amarna Revolution, where Amenhotep IV erased the name of the god Amun and put in his god Aton. Right? And then Seti I, Ramses' father, came back, erased the Aton's name, inserted the Amun's name, and then inserted his name. So his name is only the thing that he built it. No, Hatshepsut built the eighth pylon. She erected bark stations along the way from Luxor, from Karnak to Luxor. There is what is called the Opet Festival, where the god would leave Karnak Temple and go to Luxor Temple to spend a 24-day period of celebration with his wife, the goddess Mut. Mut, the earth goddess. So Amun is the sky goddess, the sun god. Mut is his wife, the earth goddess, and Carson is their son, the moon god. So he would go there. So she erected this pathway. She opened the pathway. She erected the eighth pylon. She erected 8 bark stations so that the priests who carried the bark of the god on their shoulders would rest. And that is there were 3 principal types of temples. The worship temple or a god temple, the mortuary temple or a king temple, and the processional temple, which is like a bark station where on those foot journeys the priests could rest and take their breath and then move on. So she erected those again, as I said, as a builder. Right? She repaired the Spios, which is a temple built in the mountain. It's called Spios Artemidos at a place called Beni Hassan. Beni Hassan is where, I think my son, the oldest one, he's into this karate thing and what have you. And he was fascinated because Beni Hassan has the earliest representation of martial arts. Okay? And I got him observing in my book and what have you. So she built this temple, then built it, but repaired it, because when the Hyksos, the Asian invaders, came in, the temple went into disrepair, and she repaired that, and she left instructions about it. She initiated a number of cultural religious festivities that became standard practice for the rest of the duration. The Sad Festival. The Sad Festival was a festival of rejuvenation when, after the king had ruled for a number of years, he started to get weak. In Africa, after the king, because the king was the premier life force of the community. And when he got old and he started to become feeble, they killed him. So sometime along the line, because he wanted to continue to enjoy those privileges, the king said, listen, let's just kill me ritualistically, not in fact. So they come up with a set festival where he ultimately lays down in what is supposed to be a grave, and then they do the magic and the mysticism or what have you, and then he rises and he's been rejuvenated. So she's the one who not began it, but revitalized it in the 18th dynasty. One of the highlights of her temple, which will be the other part because it's the queen, her architect, and their temple, she dispatched an expedition of 5 ships to Punt in East Africa, on the Horn, where Ethiopia is, that brought back incense trees that were planted in front of the pylon where entrance into the temple. And you can see today there's 2 holes where the trees were planted. The other trees that she planted along the pathway to the temple, they have disappeared. But she also created what you call, she called it ponds of milk, where in this desert environment, the god had water in which to refresh himself. She called it ponds of milk. This feat to the Horn of Africa was considered the first major anthropological experiment that was successful in transplanting species from one environment to another. So that is to say, they were able to bring incense trees from East Africa and planted them, and they survived in the environment of North Africa. That was unheard of. She built 2 tombs. She built a tomb when she was a princess, and she was supposed to be buried in the Valley of the Queens. So the place of interment, we have the Valley of the Kings where the kings are buried, the Valley of the Queens where the queens are buried, the Valley of the Nobles where the nobles are buried, and the Valley of the Artisans where the people who build the tombs are buried. So she built a tomb in the Valley of the Nobles, of the Queens. But she ultimately seized power and declared herself, and they call this a monstrosity. A woman on the throne of Egypt who calls herself king. So they say, well, you know, there's a commercial of one of these insurance things right now. This guy has been around for a while. He's being replaced, and he said the guy don't have a mustache, so he reaches into this thing and puts a mustache below his nose. So they said, you don't have a beard as a king. So she got a false beard and hung it on her chest, and he said, see my beard. And she was not full bosom, so she would go about with shirtless. Okay, so she would her attire would be below her chest. So, you know, I'm the king, I do just like the other kings and what have you. So, so much so that the people who worked for her would call her, would address her as Her Majesty himself. So she's a lady, but he's a king. Right? And even the people who carried her in the sedan chair, you know, the sedan chair, that was we got you got these, you see the black automobiles, large, the stretch mobile or whatever. They carry her on their shoulders. You need about a dozen people, and they would sing to her, say, Your Majesty, the chair is heavier when you're not in it. When you're sitting in the chair is very light. When you're not here, This, the empty chair is heavier than when she's sitting in. So they call her Her Majesty himself. So she built 2 tombs, and then when she became king, she built a tomb in the Valley of the Kings. They firebombed that tomb because, you know, her adversaries who would follow her, Tutmosis and his adherents, they wanted to have her whole personality erased from history. In fact, a mummy was found that no one knew who it belonged to. It was a nameless mummy lying in the byways of the society. And there was a like what we would call a medicine cabinet, a wooden cabinet for her personal stuff in the bedroom. It never was opened. So one day, the Cairo Museum, within the last 20 years, opened this closet, this little piece of furniture, and they found a tooth in there. And somehow or the other, somebody said, you know, there's a mummy lying in that back room over there full of dust and what have you, and it's missing a tooth. So they got together a team of scientists, dentists, other types of medical personnel, and they made a study of the mummy and the formation of the tooth, where it would fit, and lo and behold, Zahi Hawass announced, I can't remember the exact date, it's in my material, we have absolute proof that this is the mummy of Queen Hatshepsut. So now, I mentioned when in 1922 was 100 years since the discovery of, it was 100 years since the discovery of the hieroglyphics by Champollion. Things have a tendency of being followed through on 100-year cycles, right? Johnson and Johnson, and now hieroglyphics and King Tut. Zahi Hawass, who had been the chairman of the Antiquities Committee, said that King Tut is the only pharaoh we know absolutely who he is because we found him in a sealed tomb. There was no question about it. Many of the great the 18th and 19th dynasty pharaohs were found at Deir el-Bahari in 1881, and then in the tomb of Amenhotep II in 1898. And they were able to theorize based on, nobody was found in their own coffin. But looking at some of the bandages, they were able to decide that this is this person, this is that person. But we do know that the people who were robbing the tombs unrolled some of the mummies because there was jewelry within the bounds of the cloth in which that enclosed them. So again, but he said that King Tut is the only person that we know exactly who he was because we found him in a sealed tomb. And now he was able to declare that we have absolute proof that Hatshepsut, that this mummy belongs to, is that of Hatshepsut. So rather than erase her from history, she is now resurrected. And if you go to the temple, you will see the magnificent piece of architecture that her architect constructed for his queen. About 5-6 years ago, there was something on the internet. They're saying, let us, first of all, the Greeks coined the 7 wonders of the world. And the first wonder of the world was the pyramids of Egypt. Okay? And Dr. Ben often questioned, why is it that this magnificent temple, 3,500 years after, is still exuding its magnificence, cultural, artistic, architectural, artistic creativity, like it was when it was first built. Why is it that this was not considered a wonder of the world? And he said maybe because she was a woman who built this temple. So now I submitted her name. One of the names that was given me by the Daily Challenge, Hatshepsut's lover, because I used to write a lot about her. Well, I mean, I got 7 names, after names. Hatshepsut's lover, and what is Senat Mentuhote. I got my name at Karni Temple. I was baptized in Luxor Temple, and I offered myself up to Isis Temple in Aswan. So she built her tomb and she built her temple. And what would happen normally is that from the temple, she would, at the funerary service, she would go by procession to where the tomb was. And she theorized that if I build a tunnel under my temple, then I can be taken directly from the service to my place of interment. And they began digging under the mountain, but the soil was soft, and they had to abandon the project. So it never was completed. So she had planned a tunnel beneath the mountain, linking her temple and this tomb so as to be taken directly to the place of interment. Unfortunately, the bomb could not sustain the temple. After after her demise, the temple was firebombed. She was very clever. Yeah, like this far was saying, she was using dial all the while, but her father has said to her, you're going to have a lot of, as a woman ruler, you're going to have a lot of opposition. So what you need to do is form alliances with strong men, strong males in the kingdom. So she had this team of about 10 different people who were in just like how the president has his cabinet today. So, and her architect is one of the principal among the team of influential men who surrounded her. He had about 40 titles that he was the most powerful man in the kingdom. And one of his titles was Master of the Royal Bedroom. So people even thought that there was something going on between the two of them. And we'll come to this, but one of the things that he did is that he built a tomb in this temple that he built for the queen, so that, and he had this wonderful, we'll discuss this next time, this ceiling of the stars and placed the queen up there so that he could repose from his deceased position and admire his queen among the heavens. That's love. We know that so that's her expedition to Punt, which is recounted in the middle colonnade. The thing about this temple is that the temple is built against a mound in an elevated fashion, 3 stories when the norm was a single story. And you could actually see the entire temple when you look at it from the front. Most temples, there's hard, unless you're bird's eye view, you cannot see the interior of any temple. So you have to get you can stand in front of the temple and see the lower colonnade, the middle colonnade, the upper colonnade terrace, and in which the sanctuary is located against the mountain. So to the left of the middle colonnade is where she recounted the expedition to Punt. On the right side of that, she recounted her divine birth. That is to say, she she theorized, I mean, this shows the brilliance of the woman, right? She was having her problems with her father, who had appointed her. So when I say that she took enemy, friendly, and family fire, the father appointed her to be queen, to rule. You see, we have to understand that the king of Egypt, the queen of Egypt, is queen because of divine right. The king of Egypt is king because of marriage to the woman. The woman got the seed, right? So he was not of any royal background. She was. Okay, if we back up a bit, right? The 17th dynasty, which is, the dynasties are ruled by families, so there are about 30. The Ethiopian is the 25th, which is, you know. So the 17th dynasty, and this is what Flinders Petrie had to say about it. He said the 17th dynasty, coming from Nubia, held Thebes as its capital. Right? And these are the people who expelled the Asiatic invaders called the Hyksos. And they ultimately ended up founding the 18th dynasty. Now, the founder of the 18th dynasty was Ahmes. So we have Second Henry Tau, Kamos, and then Amos. And Amos married his sister, Nefertari. And she bears the name Ahmes Nefertari. And she is that black goddess that is pictured. Mubarak's wife, Suzanne, she wrote this introduction to a book and what have you. And she was saying, just like they said about King Tut and Mentuhotep, that they were colored black because they had been Osiris. That is to say, for the funeral service, they were painted black, which is not true. But Nefertari was considered, she was black. And there are several images of her. There was one recently in 2015, this brother that did, he died recently.
Renoko Rashid?
Renoko. He had this book called Divine Surgical Papers, and he has an image of her. There is an image on my card of the queen, and her black image. Petrie says that she was the most venerated woman in all of Egyptian history. She became a goddess. She became a goddess, and her son, Amenhotep IV, was also divinized. So both of them had their temples, and they were worshipped as divine people. So Tutmosis I went to Karnak temple to ask the god Amun to give the kingship to his daughter Hatshepsut. But they fell out because she had kicked aside his son, Tutmosis II, to be king. But he was weak, so she kicked him aside. She was a regent for him. She kicked him aside and seized power. So the father didn't like that, and the father objected. So he aligned himself with Tutmosis II, and then they were against her, right? So she was dead. This is what I said. She was taking friendly fire because she had adversaries. Enemy fire. There were friendly fire and family fire, and when her mummy was using the tooth recently, and her mummy was identified, they did blood studies on her, and the mummy the remains of the mummy of Ahmes Nefertari, the black goddess, the most venerated woman in all of Egyptian history, they found that there was a link between, they had the same DNA. So she had the right to rule, not her father or her brother or her stepson. Right? So this is what they challenged. This is why they wanted to erase her from history, and she was reconstituted and identified. So now, in addition to King Tut we know who he is, according to Zahiawas, we know absolutely that this was her mummy. So when the father was teaching her administration, he took her around, before they fell out, because he wanted his daughter to know the ins and outs of government. He took her around the country, teaching her the ins and outs of government. He married her to her brother Thutmose II, but he was weak. She pushed him aside. Her father took her to Karnak temple and asked the god Amun-Ra to give her the kingship as he had given him, the father. Next he assembled the nobles and admonished them, this is my daughter, she's going to rule, and any one of you who don't disagree with them, you're going to be killed. So they would say, but sir, she is, one of her titles should be son of Ra. He said, well, she worked that out, and she did. Right? He reminded her to make alliances with strong males in the state, right? So she concocted the story about her birth, her divine birth, which is on the right side of the second middle colonnade. So the story goes that Thoth, the god of wisdom, knowledge, writing, or whatever, was, like I said about myself and Dr. J, they were kicking it. So Amun says, I need a woman, right? So Thoth said, Your Majesty, there's a young maiden there, there's a young beautiful woman over there. She's married to Thutmose I. Why don't you go to her? So the god approached the woman in a flash of light and perfume. She was laying on a couch in her boudoir, and next thing you know, she smelled this wonderful odor. And the god appeared to her and said, and according to the story, he showed her, well, God, and they had their fun. And when he was finished doing whatever he wanted with her, he said to her, that baby, she said, I love your Jew in me. And he said to her, that girl that is in your womb right now, she will be queen of Egypt. So she concocted this whole story. And then there were about a dozen gods and goddesses who came to her, including the midwives and all of these, to help her through the birth process. And there was an image of the mother with the baby bump. All of this here is illustrated in the middle colonnade. And once the baby, we see now Khnum, which is the god. Dr. Diop likes to speak about the creation gods, all right, at the place of creation practice. So we have the Hermopolis, Heliopolis, Memphis, Karnak, and Aswan. So at Hermopolis, Thoth was the creator god. At Heliopolis, it was Ra. At Memphis, it was Ptah. At Amun, it was, at Karnak, it was Amun. And in Aswan Elephantine, it was Khnum who made man on his potter's wheel using clay. So there's an image of Khnum in the temple making Hatshepsut on his potter's wheel, and he making two individuals, she and her Ka, or spirit. So once she was born now, they took the baby to Amun and said, Your Honor, however they would address their divinity. This is the baby. And he looked down and said, yeah, it's mine. So he acknowledged. So she came up with this to explain her right to rule. But but still she's a woman, and she faced all of the vicissitudes of being a woman trying to rule in male dominated society. So she started building this, just building that, and creating, sending expedition, even encouraging, now we're at the 18th dynasty, encouraging some of the intellectuals to go or as tourists to see the ancient monuments that were created from the time of the Old Kingdom, the pyramids and the mastabas and all this stuff, and so forth. So she was doing a lot of things that endeared her to the people, because the people said, so she's a woman. But she broke the glass ceiling back then. So the ceiling maybe the passion of still a lot of people trying to break the ceiling out, but she did that years ago. So I said the whole episode is depicted on the middle colonnade, which we'll get to after. Her name was Hatshepsut, which is the female version of her name. Okay, so like the king had 5 names, the ruler had 5 names. So you have what is called the Horus name, which is Horus was the inheritor of the kingdom of rulership from Ra to Osiris and onto Horus, and the king succeeded Horus. So he had the Horus name, right? He had what is called the golden Horus name, which is to say that the body of the gods is like gold, indestructible. So the body of the pharaoh is as the same as the body of the gods, golden. So he had a golden Horus name, right? He had 2 ladies' names, which was the lady of the south and the lady of the north. And he had what is called a Sutenbat name, which is king of Upper North Egypt, that is to say the throne name. And then he had his birth name. So her birth name was, or what became her son of Ra name, Hatshepsut, Hapsitiu. So she changed that to the male equivalent. So we get Hatshepsut, S-U-T. Right? And the Sutenbat and the son of Ra name are the names that are in the cartouche. You know, I was at the festival, and this guy came to my table. I got about 30 books laid out there. And he said, man, you using the word cartouche, you should be using Chinook. And I'm saying to myself, but he ain't seen nothing here. He just heard me say the word cartouche. I was looking over Dr. Diop's word. He don't say Chinook. It's a cartouche. For convenience, we use certain terms so that people get the message, understand what it is that we're trying to say. Don't tell me about because you want to impress me how much you know, how much you write, how many books you wrote. You know, like I was in, okay, again, if you ever been there and you went to Saqqara to see the step pyramids and what have you, for years you couldn't go in. But now I was there in 2022 and it's open. So I went in there and this guy, he's sitting there at the gate and at the door entrance and he's telling me about, he's an archaeologist and this and that, he's an Egyptologist and this and he was working and I said, how many books you wrote? It's like when we used to meet with Charlton at the church near Moxgarvey Park. This guy comes over and he's talking about this individual who, I'm not giving you no names, who was visited. And he says, oh, this is going to be the lecture of the year. So yeah, I said, what's the name of this book? He said, he's still writing. You know, he's still writing that book. Right? I don't wrote 60. I can't tell you this, but I just had 30 books translated into 9 African languages. But it's a burden I can't deal with. I need money, and I don't have the funds to, bring it to conclusion and to package it, But it's done. Tiger Woods said, my score is on the board, match it. I don't care what you say, whatever. I do what I got to do. I want to make sure that when my time comes and I'm gone, my people have work that they can work with. Those young scholars that was at the Christmas party, I'm telling you what, they have something as a point of departure. I'm talking DVDs, because if your DVD at home ain't working, you're in trouble. And you can't play the DVD on the bus, on the train, on the plane. Okay? So the written word is what is important. The writing man is the exact man, because if I spell S-E-E in S-E to mean S-E-A, you will see that. And you say, ha! Well, you don't have you should have a colon here, or a semicolon, instead of a comma. So writing is where it's at. Okay? Now, they didn't make the Bible in DVD. Back then, it was written. So, that's my job, to write for our young people so that they would have information. I'm an archaeologist. I'm an armchair archaeologist. But I have the information that you need. The key to Egypt is 1870 to 1925. 1870. I call it, write it down, sister, I call it the age of the records, the ancient records of the ancient records. Okay. And I think I got about 95% of everything that's available in English. My German and French and so forth is poor, but I spent lots of money recovering as much information as possible. Okay, so that is it. That's why I say I wanted to start this research library so that our children would have something. Don't want all these politicians come and go. Tell me about a building in our community where people can go. Okay, there's nothing. Everybody got their salaries and they go on their ways and what have you. There's no place. So she changed her name, and people started calling her Her Majesty himself. Alright? So I mentioned that the people in the Sudan chair would tell her that it is lighter when she is in it and heavier when she's not in it. Dr. Diop, in his book, two of his major works is African Origin of Civilization, Built or Reality, and Civilization or Barbarism and Authentic Anthropology. He tells us that Egyptian grammarians who under the 19th dynasty were having their students recopy exercises and literary texts of the ancient empire. So they're saying that even back then, these young people were writing, engaged. There's what is called a satire of the trades, where a son followed his father in whatever profession he practiced. If he was a farmer, his son would be a farmer. If he was a goldsmith, his son would be a goldsmith. If he was a rock boat breaker, he was a rock. If he was an architect, he would be and the father would always say to his son, study hard to become an intellectual, a scribe. What does the scribe go to? The father says, all the scribe goes to work with is a pencil in his ear. Right? This guy carrying all of this heavy load. They tell us about how the contention is that Mesopotamia, Southwest Asia, was anterior to Egypt, and that is to say, they influenced Egypt. In fact, Alexander Moret said that, and I quote, he said, "Who was Upper Egypt? Well, you know there's Upper Egypt and Lower Egypt. He says, who was Upper Egypt influenced, if not by Lower Egypt? And Dr. Diop said, if that is so, why are all the important monuments in Upper Egypt and not in Lower Egypt? So they tried to show that Southwest Asia was anterior to Egypt. But in Southwest Asia, they wrote on stone tablets, right? This is how I, remember I told you, I tell my students, hide out in the library, you know. Can you imagine a student carrying all his books in his back in stone tablets? Whereas the Egyptian student got a lot of papyrus manuscripts like that. So the father told his son, study hard, become an intellectual. All you need is a pencil in your ear, and you'll be able to, be. I've never seen a goldsmith on an important mission of the government or whatever. Right? So these kids were studying or reprinting documents from the Old Kingdom. This is what we got to get our children to do. This is why I try to develop this notion of, first of all, beginning to write hieroglyphics. First of all, beginning to understand what are the fundamentals of intellectual autonomy, because intellectual autonomy is what gives you the power to confront and contend with every situation. So Dr. Diop said that the grammarians who under the 18th dynasty were having their students recopy exercises and literary texts of the ancient empire on ostraka, that is to say, pieces of pottery that were broken, and they used that as script to just draw things or whatever. And this is over 2,000 years before Aristotle. Aristotle claims in his Ethics and some of his other works that he created grammar as a form of formal logic. So we must teach the young people rigorous mathematical logic. Where did arithmetic and geometry begin? The Egyptians are the only inventors of geometry, and Jambilicus tells us that all the theorems of lines, geometry, come from Egypt. By posing the problem in reverse, we can measure the importance of what the Greeks, Pythagoras and Aristotle in particular, Plato, Euclides, and others borrowed from the Egyptian sciences, all the while keeping completely quiet about it. A few years back, I was reading somewhere where one of our scholars has shown that of all the 20 or so forms of science that are taught in the schools, none of them mention black inventors or black scientists from the ancient times. There are no black science books, okay? So we are again at war, and we need to have give our children the opportunity to contend. Can you teach grammar without having created a meta-language, without conceptualizing, without discovering, particularly at the level of syntax, the whole grammatical logic of the language taught? The Egyptians did all that more than 2,000 years before Aristotle. Can you establish a mathematical formula, even through empirical means, without having invented beforehand a mathematical logic? Yes, the Egyptians were the sole inventors of elementary geometry. Can you create an arithmetic, even an elementary form, without consciously relying on a mathematical logic? Dr. Theophile Obenga, Dr. Diop's research associate, told us that mathematics is the basis of civilization. Can you engage in solving mathematical operations, calculating the area, the volumes, evaluating numerical quantities, etc., without having radically separated the myth of the number from the concept of the number? Thus, if the two are brought together again, as in the lofty metaphysical speculations of the Egyptian priests, it can only be on symbolic grounds and not as the result of mental confusion. See what, he says, again, the author says, see what revealed religions Judaism, Christianity owe to the Egyptian religion. The theory of creation by the word. Remember I tell you that at Hermopolis, thought was the God, created God of that site of worship. He created by word of voice. He laughed 8 times. Ha 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 ha. And then clapped his hands like that. And 8 gods appeared. Each with a predestined responsibility. So the Africans of Egypt were the inventors of creation by voice, by word. The theory of creation by the word, by simple vision, by the representation of future beings in the divine conscience of Ra, creation and potentiality, first during an eternity, intelligible concepts before the actualization into sentient beings, the objects of a second creation. Finally, the divine Trinity, remember, expressed in the text for the first time in the history of all religion. This Trinity, Champollion, who deciphered the language in 1822, was the first to mention, he was Frenchman, the triad, that is, the Father, the Mother, and the Son, the Trinity, the 3 people. In revealed religion, it's Father, Spirit, Father, Son, and Spirit, I think, something to that effect. One can distinguish 3 great systems. Okay, in the philosophy that Dr. Obenda talks about in his book, African Philosophy, the Pharaonic period, 2780 to 330 BC, he talks about the notion of the creation of philosophy by the Egyptians 2,000 or so years before the Greeks. He says, one can distinguish 3 great systems of thought in Egypt that try to explain the origins of the universe and the appearance of all that is. The Hermopolitan system, the Heliopolitan system, the Memphite system, and this can be added to the Theban system. Then I'd also mention Khnum at Elephantine, the Khnum system. Dr. Carruthers out of Chicago reminded us that these were not competing mystical, spiritual entities. It was one entity seen from different lenses, different parts of the country, but it's the same oneness, one God. So the respective gods of these 5 points were Thoth, Ra, Ptah, Amun-Ra, and then Khnum in the south. Thoth created by word. He laughed 8 times. Ha 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 ha. And 8 gods appeared with their predestined responsibility. Ra used spittle. Some say that he spit. Some say he masturbated. But what he did was he created from liquid, however you want to determine it. Ptah created through thought. He thought something and he passed it on to thought, who thought, and the word appeared into human or material reality. Amun was invisible, and he incorporated all of the attributes of these prior gods. I said that Khnum made man through using Nile mud. He was working like how you do pottery. You know, when I first started to teach at the City University in New York, the people who sat on the P&B budget and determine who would get in to teach in school on J Street here. That time I was teaching there, G2, Michael Hooper, Joe Mashiriki. I ended up outlasting them. Then I went to Oxford in '76, and then in '86 I left to run for school board, and yeah, got involved in everything else. So the Hermopolitan Ogdoad, which is Ogdoad, is 9 individuals, 8 gods, and a principal god make 9. So Thoth created 8, and he made 9. And the same goes for Amun, who created 8 gods, and he 9. But of the 8 died, you would say that how is it that the gods can die? But they died and they were buried at Medinat Habu, and they emerged as this enormous snake called Kamutep, who it is said that he had achieved his time. And so Hatshepsut built another temple over there, as well as the Ethiopians built a temple there. Okay, so the Hermopolitan Ogdoad, where Thoth presided, as I said, he laughed 8 times. So he created Ku and Kuket, Ku and Kut, the primordial darkness and its opposite, darkness and light. Nun and Nunet, N-U-N and N-U-N-E-T, the primordial waters and their opposite, matter and nothingness. He and He-Het, H-E and H-E-H-E-T, spatial infinity and its opposite, the infinite and the finite, the unlimited and the limited. Amun and Amunet, the hidden and the visible, the pneumon and the phenomenon. Niau and Neonet, N-I-A-O-U and N-I-A-O-U-E-T, emptiness and its opposite, the void and the replete. This chaotic matter contained all at the archetypal state, according to Plato, all the essences of the body of the future being that one day will be called into existence, such as sky, earth, stars, air, fire, animals, plants, human beings, etc. Storm. This primordial matter, nous, or the primordial waters, was elevated to the level of divinity called Nun in Egyptian cosmology. Thus, from the start, each principle of the explanation of the universe is doubled by divinity, and as philosophical thought developed in Egypt, and more particularly in Greece, the Greek form replaced the Egyptians, and this is why we got to uncover everything, and we got to teach again the young people how to achieve intellectual autonomy, so that they can go in there and examine rather than accept things as they are presented. I mean, right here, this gentleman presented a whole fascinating amount of knowledge, and then he was asked, so what do we do? And he said, it's my job to present. It's up to you to use what I present. And you can only do that if you have the tools. So we need to teach those young people on the stage at the Christmas party how to do intellectual autonomy. Primitive matter also contained the law of transformation, the principle of the evolution of the mind, matter through time, equally considered as a divinity. Kepra. It is a law of becoming that acting on matter through time will actualize the archetypes, the essences, the beings who are therefore already in potentiality before being created in actuality. Thus, carried to its own evolutionary movement, eternal matter, uncreated by going through the stages of organization, ends up by becoming self-aware. The first consciousness that emerges from the primordial loom, it is God, Ra, the demiurge, who is going to complete creation. But with the appearance of the demiurge, Ra, Egyptian cosmology takes a different direction with the introduction of an idealist component. Ra achieved creation through the word that Islam and the Jewish-Christian religion did. So he did it before there. Logos, the spirit, objective idealism. I was reading about, first of all, Dr. Ben had told us that when he was a youngster, very young, in the Virgin Islands, the teacher said, we're going to take you downtown to see the world's tallest building. And he went downtown and he saw this 2-story building. And then the family moved from there to Puerto Rico, and he saw the world's tallest building was a 9-story building. And then the family came to America and found out that the Chicago building, the sales building in Chicago, was 105 stories. Each one of them was a world in which you lived. So I was reading this book by this woman called Edith Hamilton, and she was talking about how the Greek gods created the world. But we have to understand that they created the world after the world was already created. So it's about how we accept and process the information that we get. And we don't just say because he presents it from the position of authority, then that is it, no matter what. Like some guys will say, I was a born Republican, I was a born Democrat. You can't change that. So as soon as Ra conceived beings, they emerge into existence. He thinks about it, it comes into being. There is therefore an obvious objective relation between spirit and things. The real is necessarily rational, intelligent, because it is spirit. Therefore, the spirit can perceive eternal nature. Ra is the first God, the first demiurge of history who created through the world. All other gods in history came after him, and there exists demonstrable historical relationship between Ra's word, the Ka, or the universal reason. Ra did 2 things of significance. One, he said he created he created, first of all, the 4 divine pairs, Shu and Teflet, Geb and Nu, Osiris and Isis, and Set and Nephthys. And the Greeks in these 2 pairs are from the 4 elements that make up the universe of the pre-Socratic Greek philosophers. We're talking about Thales, Animaxa, Heraclitus, Parmenides, Anaxagoras, which refers to air, water, earth, fire. And so forth. But really, I would like to stop here, and if there are any questions, I would take them before whatever time is, I guess my time is up. But if there are any questions, but really will address that in a minute. Sir, I wish to entertain any questions that you people will have.
Okay, anybody from the Zoom audience got a question for Dr. Monderson? Zoom audience? Anybody want to ask Doc anything? My friend Monderson on his lecture? Okay, thank you very much. Anybody from the floor want to ask Doc anything on his lecture?
Dr. Monderson, what were the 3 types of temple? One was processional, I think the other one was the theme.
So
the types of temple?
the 3 types of temples are worship or God temple. Worship or God temple. The second is the king or mortuary temple. Mortuary. And the third is procession. Procession. That is to say, there's a rest area. The processional temple has an opening. It's not closed. It's got an opening. It's got two entrances. Okay. Most temples have a sanctuary. All temples have a sanctuary. But the sanctuary is generally a closed sanctuary. Karnak is the only temple with an open sanctuary. That is to say, an opening to the east where the sun, upon rising, shines its rays into the temple, where on the sanctuary, the table of the sanctuary, where the god would rest, awaiting the arrival of his prototype or his outer self from the outer world. And the end is where, at the end of the day, after he's traversed the heavens, to reflect back on the last rays of the sun. So that is the only temple that's got two openings. Every other temple only has one. But the processional temple has two. So you would go in, rest the bark on the table, and then you would come back out instead of reversing your entry. Of course, there are other types of temples, smaller temples, the kiosks, the temples built into the mountain, like Abu Simbel and the Spios Artemidos. Hatshepsut's temple, for the most part, is built beside a mountain, but the sanctuary is dug into the mountain. And there are oftentimes chapels, so there are different sets of, but the three principal types of temple is worship, mortuary, and processional.
And you were talking about the spelling of her name of Hatshepsut, or S-I-T-I-O-U-S, I guess.
Oh, well, her female name was Hatshepsut, Hatshepsitou.
Spell that again.
Hatshepsitou. And she changed that to the male equivalent, Hatshepsut, Hatshepsut. That's that. Hatshepsut. That was her son of Ra title, and her Sutanbat title was Makara, Maatkara, Makara, and Hatshepsut. Those are two of the 5 names, and those two are in the cartouche. That is to say, it's a rope that encircles it in a knot.
Thank you.
Yes.
Any other questions?
Okay.
Okay, Doc, one thing I wanted to ask you is the great queens and pyramids and all the history in there. The invaders, how large at the greatness was the armies protecting them, and how did they fail and for these invaders to get in there? And for them to wipe that history out of the mind.
You see, there is something called the underlying process of history, where civilization is like you as a baby. You are born, you grow into manhood, old age, and you die. So states, societies rise and fall. All right? But to sustain yourself, it said that if you're 50 and you take care of yourself, you could be 60, 65 and still feel like 50. So states unable to feel strong leadership succumb. Okay? And again, without really going back over it, in modern times, and especially like a nation like this nation, they adjust themselves, okay? We're not going to have a Great Depression like we did in 1929, because we've set up structures to follow the economic movement of the society and make adjustments. So in terms of the nations being able to defend themselves, remember now the leader is the one that mobilizes and galvanizes the people to do whatever it is needed to defend themselves. And once they don't have strong leadership, and then you have many people pulling against the grain. One of the things that we know about Egypt is that, and especially this came out in the Middle Kingdom, that there was always palace intrigue. Right? We hear a lot about the Asian ladies coming to marry the king of Egypt, but they weren't really queens. They were just harem ladies. But and the king had his way with them. And each one of them always wondered, why is it that my son is not king, but her son is king? So you had these palace intrigues. And until ultimately, one day, one of the Middle Kingdom pharaohs, 12th dynasty guys, he was resting and he heard this commotion, people rushing towards him. He grabbed his sword and defended themselves, and he decided that I'm going to adopt my son as a co-regent so that his succession will be determined before I pass away. All right? And there was another instance in which a young prince was on the battlefield and his father was murdered. And word came to him and he left the battlefield. His soldiers never knew that he was murdered. And he hurried back to the palace to assume leadership. And I use the parallel of modern times when the revolutionaries, the military especially, seize power from the elected government. The first thing they do is they try to seize the radio station. They block the runway of the airport, and then they start playing martial order and martial music and tell the people that there's a new reality. So you needed to have strong leadership to defend the people, to mobilize the people, to go to war, to defend what you had. And then there's changing geopolitics realities that you had to deal with, that everybody wanted to be a part of the new world order. And so we lost.
Are there any other questions for Doc? Brother Mike?
Yes. What's the meaning of the Sphinx?
What is the meaning of the Sphinx? I cannot specifically tell you, but I will tell you that it was created before the accepted date of its creation. So we are told that the Sphinx was created on the Khafra, the build of the second pyramid. Right? There is evidence that there could have been an early civilization in that part of Africa. John Anthony West looks at what is like watermarks on the forepart of the Sphinx and tried to determine that it was created around 10,000 BC. But it is a sentinel who is keeping record of all that has happened. You see it so much. It is said that when Napoleon arrived in Egypt, he said to his men, millennia of history looks down upon you. Right? I've come across that. I gotta check with Boval and Michelaski or somebody. I got the information, and it's not. I can't tell you the precise meaning. I can tell you that he is there as a sentinel. Okay. Back in the 80s, after I ran for school board in 1986, I was introduced to Mary Pinkett. She was the first black woman elected to the city council. and she appointed me. She said, Monderson, I hear you walk on water. I said, well, I tried. She said, I'm going to appoint you to the community board. I said, okay. But I was in Vietnam, we were under some heavy firing one rainy night, and I said, if I ever got to America, I'm going to run for Congress. I couldn't. I was trying to raise a family. So back in '86, this lady said, we're going to appoint you to the community board. And then now I started to feel my oats. I said one day I was going to run against Mary. And then this elder called me aside and said, listen, you can't run against Mary. You know, Mary has developed seniority in the interests of all people. You have to wait until Mary vacates the seat. And she was term limited. And then I said, okay, I'm going to run. And then Mary called me aside and said, there were 13 people running, including Letitia James, who emerged victorious. She said, Monderson, I don't want you to run for the seat. I want you to keep an eye on everybody. Keep an eye, that is the admonition that this great woman gave to me. Keep an eye on everybody. Record what they do.
Any other questions going once? Ladies and gentlemen, on the Zoom and in the audience, give Dr. Monderson a great big hand. We appreciate his lecture. It will be on YouTube tomorrow in the afternoon. Give him a great big hand. Thank you very much. And happy Kwanzaa to you. Yeah.